absolute hellhole. All the dogs here are going to die.
Dogs, otherwise known as man's best friend, a phrase used to refer to their millennia-long history of close relations, loyalty, friendship and companionship with humans. The UK in particular is often self-categorised as a nation of dog lovers. Big, small, fluffy or trim, there's a dog out there for everyone and anyone. But what if I told you that a firm family favourite breed of dog was being bred on a mass puppy mill-like scale for the experimentation purposes of the vivisection industry, right under our noses? On location in Whitton, Cambridgeshire, thousands of beagles are bred every year to fulfil experimentation purposes. Female beagles are forced to produce litter after litter in barren cages, whilst puppies are confined to cages until they reach around 12 weeks of age, when they are shipped off to labs to be experimented on and die. But there are people who are starting to fight back and be the voice for these animals. Like-minded people are working together to oppose and bring an end to the cruel, abusive exploitation of all animals in the vivisection industry. Recently, many people have started to speak up about the government's dirty secret, which has been hidden in the Cambridgeshire countryside for years. People, including various celebrities, such as singer Will Young.
I'm here to bring attention to this facility that breeds Beagle puppies for testing and their animal testing.
The Home Office does not collect or allow the public to know any information on the procedures, statistics and welfare standards of what goes on inside the Cambridgeshire facility. All we have is undercover camera footage from protesters and the knowledge that if the government would rather not talk about it, then there's probably something very sinister going on indeed.
There is a place that is hidden out of sight, where the beagles suffer and no one sees their plight.
Episode 2. The Gates to Hell. Imagine you're taking a lovely walk in the countryside of Whitton, Cambridgeshire. You hear birds tweeting, squirrels rustling about in the trees, and the sound of the still morning air slowly rising for the day. But if you listen really closely, you can hear the muffled cries of dogs in the distance. One morning, these cries were even louder. At 5:30 a.m. on Tuesday the 20th of December, 12 supporters of an activist group called Animal Rebellion broke into MBR Acres in Cambridgeshire and freed 18 Beagle puppies.
Right, in.
They say this was the largest ever open animal rescue in the UK.
We're here, we've just freed I don't know how many dogs from here at MBR Acres. It's absolute hellhole. Alright, everyone stick to the plan.
We've just rescued as many puppies as we could.
Evan, this one!
They recorded their break-in and shared their footage online. The videos showed young dogs clambering at the gates of their kennels, the ground beneath their paws covered in their own faeces and urine.
These beautiful beagles here. It breaks my heart that we can't rescue them all. We've taken as many as we can, but that's why we have to put animal testing on trial. So that the suffering of all beings, these beautiful sentient beings, will feel the pain and suffering that animal testing puts them through.
18 dogs were freed that day, but 2 ended up back in police custody and eventually were returned to MBR Acres, where they were put back in line to meet their horrid fate as victims of the vivisection industry. Their liberators named them Love and Libby.
2 dogs remain in police care following a break-in at MBR Acres, Whitton, Cambridgeshire yesterday. We recognise the strong feelings this issue raises in many people, and we are in contact with MBR as the legal owners of the dogs to discuss the next steps. We will release more information once these discussions have concluded.
The public bombarded the police with calls and letters demanding Love and Libby be freed, to the point where the police actually asked the public to stop getting in touch, as they could not handle the volume of public outcry at their doorstep. But despite all this, the 2 beagles were returned as they were considered stolen property.
Unfortunately, today we've received the news that the police have returned the 2 puppies to MBR, claiming that MBR fulfills all the relevant Home Office checks and requirements for hygiene, welfare and cleanliness. Therefore, they claim that it's safe to send the 2 beagles back there. It's possible that the 2 will be treated as contaminated property and euthanized immediately. Otherwise, they'll be sent for tests in labs where they'll die painful and needless deaths rather than being able to live full and happy lives.
After the break-in, the liberators of the 18 saved Beagle puppies handed themselves over to the police. They said,
"The actions that I took today
to save innocent dogs from suffering and death
are justified, necessary and lawful."
MBR Acres breeds up to 2,000 Beagle puppies each year.
for sale to the animal testing industry. They are kept in horrific conditions for 16 weeks.
Transported to labs and experimented on until death.
MBR also has bleeding licenses,
which allow them to bleed healthy dogs to death to harvest their bloods and organs.
Is this the kind of society that we want to live in, where these horrors are allowed?
MBR has committed regular and extreme breaches of US federal law at their North American facilities.
The lawful exploitation was so severe at their Italian facility that it was closed by the courts.
It is not just MBR, but the entire animal testing industry in question.
UK law demands researchers use suitable non-animal alternatives where they exist. We now have fantastic technologies like organs on a chip, which are scientifically proven to be far more reliable than animal testing.
Yet there is very little will from the industry or government to validate the superior non-animal models or enforce their use.
Despite laws to replace and reduce animal testing, over 500,000 more animals are used in cruel and unnecessary research.
So on the 20th of December, I rescued as many beautiful Beagle puppies as I could from a life of hell.
After ensuring the dogs were safe, I remained at the scene to await arrest with the intention to stand before a jury.
They are now living happy lives with loving families.
I'm putting it in the hands of the people to look at me and decide if they see a burglar or a dog rescuer, to determine if I should be free or sent to prison.
A jury have the power and the right to find us not guilty. By finding us innocent, they will be finding the animal testing industry guilty.
This trial will not be about us. It will be about taking animal testing to trial.
It's really clear to see from the undercover footage taken at MBR Acres that the dogs kept here are completely lacking in stimulation and look as though they don't meet British or European legal guidelines. And if they technically do, it's fair to say that a review of these guidelines is clearly needed. To paint the picture for you, the kennels are small and dirty, with no bedding for the dogs to lie on. They're left to sit in their own excrement for hours on end, and dogs are not allowed to interact with staff and spend most of their time alone, without any toys or sounds other than the other dogs' cries around them. The owners don't want the public seeing how filthy this establishment really is. There is outside enclosures that you can see from various drone footage that protesters have filmed, but this weird outdoor enclosure space is full of children's playthings like slides, little push cars, and the dogs are never out in them. It is clearly just for show. MBR Acres have even said themselves that the dogs have to remain pathogen-free in order to be used for the testing that they're needed for. So the question is, why bother having fake outdoor runs in the first place if these animals are never to see the light of day? The drones that are flown above MBR Acres to capture this footage also capture the unfortunate reality of what is known as Death Van Day. This is when the vans descend on MBR Acres to be loaded up with puppies.
This morning inside MBR, 2 vans were loaded up with puppies and driven away to laboratories to be tortured. We used to film the loading procedure like in this old footage, but that's not possible anymore because they've built a gazebo over the loading bay. They're obsessed with secrecy and hiding away.
Every few weeks, puppies are crated and shut into vans to be transported to meet their horrid fates at toxicology labs across the country. They get taken outside to the vans in big metal trolleys, with their tails wagging and barking with excitement, as they know nothing of the fate that awaits them. They are then driven to labs where it is understood that they are forced to ingest chemicals, and those that don't die from this are horridly killed regardless, sometimes even bled to death. The MBR Acres site is only accessed via a large gate that leads off the main road. This gate has a large billboard-style poster pasted on the front that reads, "Animal testing saves lives. We are proud of what we do."
MBR, to our utter astoundment, have just put up on the gates. We're literally speechless, aren't we?
Didn't even know what to say.
They haven't said a word to us, not one word, in the 8 months we've been here. And they've now put up this, I've never seen anything like it. It's a French banner with a picture of a baby in an incubator. They couldn't wish to be more out of touch and more offensive, no?
Absolutely.
And there's a picture of a dog, and I don't know whether it's meant to be some, it's got a tube down its throat, but I don't know whether it's meant to be some animal research. Saves lives, huh?
This look it's not so bad approach to animals used in testing gives an uneasy feeling and really echoes the imagery and attitude that the Marshall Bioresources website tries to get away with, making people believe that animal testing is just a necessary evil that isn't as horrid as protesters say it is. But all the collected undercover footage and evidence definitely suggests that there are many problems with animal testing, which is happening all over the world as we speak. Outside the gates, labelled "The Gates to Hell" by protesters, is a group of like-minded people fighting to end the ill treatment of animals inside the facility. They are called Camp Beagle UK. They are also joined by other organisations such as Beagle Freedom United and Animal Rebellion. These people have spent night and day on the sidelines of this major government-approved puppy mill to work together to raise awareness of the goings-on at MBR Acres and do everything in their power to get it shut down. They describe themselves as an independent movement of dedicated and like-minded people working together to oppose and bring an end to the cruel, abusive exploitation of all animals in the vivisection industry. They say that they aim to promote the growth and use of non-human relevant science through the compulsory use of non-animal methods.
Thomas Hartung, a professor of toxicology at Johns Hopkins University, has created an AI tool that is more accurate than animal testing in predicting chemical toxicity. While animal testing has an average accuracy of 81%, Hartung's algorithm is 6% more accurate at 87%, giving it the potential to diminish the use of controversial methods.
A lot of celebrities have gotten involved to raise their voices of influence to highlight the horrid realities of MBR Acres, such as Ricky Gervais, Miriam Margolyes, but the most notable celebrity support is from that of singer Will Young, who attended a protest at MBR Acres in November 2022, and he handcuffed himself to the gates of the facility.
I've spoken to my friend Rob Rinder for legal advice. This is a peaceful protest. People are unaware that there is still animal testing in this country and it is not needed.
In a sit-down interview with medical doctor, scientist and author Dr. Ray Greek, comedian Ricky Gervais had this to say.
Deep down, I think that even if torturing animals to death might find a cure for cancer, I still think it's ethically wrong because we have no right to torture animals to death. I think for any reason, it's not a good enough reason.
Upon closer inspection of the undercover footage taken by a past whistleblower employee of MBR Acres, it is clear to see that the Beagles aren't content in their situation. TV host Chris Packham called the footage a view of hell and said, "I do not understand how or why this can continue to happen." Downton Abbey star Peter Egan narrated some undercover footage, and he said it was one of the saddest things I've ever done. He added, "Nothing can prepare you for the shock of seeing the grief-stricken depression of these beautiful puppies."
A dog comes right up to the camera and looks directly into the lens to plead for help. The floor is covered in excrement, which is impossible for the dogs to avoid as they walk. All the dogs begin to look directly at the camera, asking to be rescued. Another dog pleads with all her might as she walks on her hind legs. Why are you doing this to us? Why are we made to suffer like this? Several dogs walk on their hind legs, pleading with the camera to be let out. A dog places her front paws on the plastic crate, which is her cell's one bed.
Some of the beagles are seen carrying out repetitive movements, which vets say signals frustration. The dogs are also emitting high-pitched noises, signalling distress and franticness. The Independent reported that one vet who watched the footage likened the scenes to those inside pig factory farms. The last Home Office inspection of MBR Acres was in June 2022, and they reported to have found no breaches of codes or legislation. But putting quality of enclosures and cleanliness aside, many argue that the surroundings and day-to-day life inside MBR Acres causes serious mental distress for the dogs. Most people would feel bad leaving their dog even locked in their own home all day, but these beagles suffer much worse than what your average pet owner would deem neglectful behaviour. According to an animal behaviour expert from Winchester University, the dogs can be seen in footage to be showing stereotypical behaviour seen in animals captive in zoos and aquariums, and brought on by the inability to either escape or behave naturally.
Stereotypical behaviour is what's most commonly associated with this, and that is repetitive, functionless behaviour that has no real purpose.
So things like rocking, self-harming, feather plucking, fur plucking, these behaviours are not occurring in the wild, so it is something which is very closely linked to captivity.
Abnormal behaviour in captive animals can include highly repetitive, invariant, functionless behaviour such as repetitive pacing, swaying, head bobbing, bar biting, over-grooming, or even excessive licking. Most dogs in family lives are given toys, chews, beds, and play to stay stimulated and happy. But the only available attempt at entertainment for these dogs that's visible in the undercover footage is a large rubber-looking ball hanging off a chain from the roof of their enclosure. It's even pushed out of the way and the dogs don't seem overly interested. The general care for the dogs is clearly lacking in all areas by everyone's standards, apart from the Home Office inspectors. John Curtin, a protester who shares a lot of content online with Camp Beagle UK of live protesting outside the gates of MBR Acres, says that, after months of monitoring staff movements, protesters have concluded the pups were left alone for 15 hours on weekdays and even longer at weekends. As a general guideline, the RSPCA advises that dogs should not be left alone for any longer than 4 hours at a time, with the absolute maximum being 8 hours, but this is only recommended if your dog has a way to get outside for a bathroom break. Dogs are very social animals, often craving regular human attention, and without it, they become bored and lonely. We can only imagine the sad psychological state of the beagles inside MBR Acres, as it seems Marshall Beagles Resources will never let us in close enough to know the full extent of the dog's welfare, both physical and mental. A spokesperson for MBR Acres said, "The new footage does not show any irregularities, but does show healthy and content dogs in a regulated breeding establishment who are well cared for by a team of trained and dedicated staff. The dogs are typically noisy, only for brief spurts, for instance when surprised by outside noises. Some of the footage shows animals lying down, which is unsurprising for early morning or late evening filming. The animals are very obviously in excellent condition, which would be expected for a regulated business staffed almost exclusively with animal care experts." A spokesperson said to the Independent newspaper that until legal requirements change, the company will continue to breed animals for medical research. But it appears that MBR Acres isn't backing down, and neither will protesters. MBR are not happy with the protest and the people rallying at their gates. They've been trying to prosecute the protesters, claiming that they've been harassing the staff at their facility, but protesters and animal organisations have yet to back down in any way. Marshall Beagles Resources and another breeding facility called Invigo operate in the UK, but both of these businesses have criminal records for animal cruelty, yet are given UK government contracts and are funded by the taxpayer. In 2015, a criminal court in a northern city of Italy handed down jail sentences to 3 employees of the Green Hill facility, a company owned by Marshall Bioresources. Green Hill's director, Roberto Bravi, was given 1-year jail sentence. Renzo Graziosi, a veterinary surgeon at the facility, and Ghislaine Rondo, who manages Marshall's activities in Europe, each received 1.5 years. Previously, the Green Hill facility in Italy was temporarily closed in 2012 after campaigners made allegations of animal mistreatment.
Animal Liberation Front activists have staged a protest in Montichiari in northern Italy against a facility that breeds beagles for research purposes. While the debate continues in the scientific world about the effectiveness of animal testing for scientific research, the ALF is demanding such tests be stopped altogether.
We demand the closure of Green Hill and that the dogs be placed in care. It would be useless to shut them down if the dogs end up the same way they do now. The dogs at Green Hill are used exclusively for vivisection.
Later, dozens of protesters climbed over the fence to reach the cages holding the animals. As police tried to get past the blockade of about 1,000 protesters, several ALF activists came out carrying puppies and 1 adult female beagle. The ALF protesters managed to release up to 30 puppies before police broke through their barricade. The police eventually arrested 12 protesters and took back 7 of the puppies, but were unable to return them to the facility as they were told the dogs' isolation had been interrupted and corrupted. Tom Santarelli, BBC News.
A local court allowed the activist group immediately to distribute the animals to foster homes, and an investigation began. In May 2013, the court declared Green Hill innocent of all charges, but a week later, public prosecutors brought the same charges against 4 individuals. If the sentences were confirmed, however, the defendants would be unlikely to serve jail time because in Italy, sentences of less than 3 years are generally converted to fines or to a probation period. Currently, these institutions that use beagles in testing, or breeders that supply them to the laboratories, are required by law to have a rehoming policy in order to be granted a licence. What happens though is that the dogs are always euthanised rather than being rehomed. It is common knowledge that MBR Acres always euthanises any dogs they deem unfit for purpose. These might be the runt of the litter, or maybe slightly unwell or have a disability. All of which are problems that don't mean a dog couldn't go on to have a fulfilling life. But MBR Acres kills these puppies on site, with no interest in rehoming them or seeking extra veterinary attention for them. This is because they are money-making assets, not sentient beings with a right to life. The same happens at the laboratories that MBR Acres sells the puppies to as well. The 2,000 puppies that MBR breeds every year in the UK go on to establishments such as LabCorp, Sequani, Envigo, Charles River, RCVS, and many more. Rather than rehome, they will kill the dogs, as it's easier. The dogs are killed and have been photographed in skips. There is also evidence that they are kept in vans, waiting medical waste collection. It's much easier, faster, and less fuss to dispose of them this way. You've been listening to At What Cost? Puppy Killing and the MBR. Next time, I take a look at the vivisection industry. What is it, and why does it exist?
There is a place that is hidden out of sight.
The music you can hear is Punkade, in solidarity with the MBR Beagles.
Well, the beagles suffer and no one sees their plight.
All sources in this episode are linked in the description.